The answer to your last question is yes. Now, I grew up in a world that said depression is either reactive or endogenous. And then somebody developed a life event scale, and they asked people who had, quote, endogenous depression, and it turned out they had just as many life events as those who had so-called reactive. These concepts we don't have the language to do justice to what we know even today. The serotonin system in our brain relies on what's called a serotonin transporter to break down serotonin after it's been used. And some of us have a form of what are called alleles. We either have short alleles or long alleles. If people who have short alleles for this serotonin transporter experience adverse life events like a death or a job loss or something, they are much more likely to develop depression than somebody who doesn't have this short allele. The same can be true even of the treatment response. We can even change the expression of genes based on how the environment treats us in terms of separation, abuse, many other variables. So it's very difficult to just say, there's a reactive component. Some people have more resilience in terms of they've more social supports in their lives, and these issues can be important in why somebody can bounce back from the same adverse circumstances, and other people seem to get stuck. Again, I would suggest that while it may not always be the singlet 25 switch, but there may be in different people different switches that seem to get stuck. How are we doing for time? One more question. Let me see. I see a hand at the very back here. Oh, now I'm going to also give a young lady at the back after that, because I know that she had her hand up earlier. Go ahead, please. Question is there a relationship between intelligence measured by intelligence tests and depression? And I would say the answer is basically no. That there obviously you may in fact show an impairment in certain aspects of what tests measure when you get repeated depressions. But you will also have preserved areas that show that you were functioning at a much higher level previously. And I'm going to give this young lady the last question. Very good question. The question is, if you continue to do the stimulation over time, will it become less effective? I would have to fall back, say, on the Parkinson's disease studies that are up to 10 years. And what you can say about Parkinson's disease is it tends to have a bit of a progressive deterioration. So if you look at the outcome after 1 year, it's very much better than before the stimulator was switched on. But if you go to 5 years, it's still better than 1 year. Sorry, it's still better than before the stimulator was switched on, but it's not as good as it was at 5 years. And there's a bit of a deterioration. Now, we have the longest series, and we have people like Rob who are more than 3 years out and who are still doing very well. We don't know if at 10 years that will still be the case. There's a battery life to be taken into account. The higher you turn the voltage up, the shorter the battery life, so you probably have to go back and change the battery more frequently. We hope, we were having a discussion earlier about what is a cure, what is a remission, what is a recovery. We can perhaps more modestly say that our goal is a remission, but we don't know when people may have a recurrence. I really think in the interests of time and the other room I should stop at this point.
And I'd like to invite David Smith, who is chairman of our foundation, to thank Dr. Kennedy.
Well, Dr. Kennedy, thank you. Thank you so much for a very, very stimulating presentation. And you've obviously struck a chord with the large number of people who've turned out in the very active questioning. I suspect that it's perhaps in part because the high prevalence of depression in the population, and perhaps also because it's a condition that society has had a great deal of difficulty in recognizing. And it's slowly coming out from under the covers, and I think people are becoming much more understanding about it now, and you've contributed to that greatly today, and I would like to thank you very much. Dr. Kennedy's work is an example of the combination of clinicians and researchers at the University Health Network and Toronto Western Hospital in particular, and it's a great example of being able to see the work that goes on at the research stage and then bringing it to the clinic and treating patients and seeing how that develops. In this case with deep brain stimulation, it's gradually developing, and they're gradually expanding it and exploring it. But it's really an example, I think, of bench to bedside, and that's a great feature of the University Health Network and all the clinicians and researchers who are work here. And donors are a very important part of the picture because the donations that come from the very many generous supporters of the University Health Network are very key money that goes into the research programs. There are granting agencies that provide money for the research study, and Dr. Kennedy referred to one of them today. But it's the donor dollars that, when added to that, they're like the seed money that enables the doctors and researchers to get the grants, enables them to carry out the kind of work that you saw today. So we thank all of our donors for their generosity and their continuing support of the Toronto General Western Hospital Foundation and the various programs. So thank you all very much, and thank you again, Dr. Kennedy.
And I will invite Dr. Kennedy to make his way upstairs to deal with questions that people may have up there. I simply want to do two things. Add my thanks to those of David Smith for your support. You're here because you are our donors, and we take great pride in showing you, giving you a window into the research that your dollars make possible. I also want to invite you to return to the atrium, where we still do have refreshments, and I believe Dr. Kennedy will be making his way back down to the atrium as well. So thank you for attending tonight, and good night.